welcome back to the 5th Division podcast. It is the 17th of August 2022. We are recording this on a Wednesday after all the Tuesday night matches took place. So the format for this podcast this week, if you listened to our last one, we went through all the major talking points from Saturday, but we've had 2 rounds of fixtures since then. So rather than try and cover all 24 matches and make the podcast 6 hours long, I think the best thing to do is look at the winners and losers of the last 2 rounds of matches, taking a look at those sides that have done particularly well and those that may have not done as well as we expected. Also, a couple of other talking points to be wedged in between. I'm joined by Nathan. Nathan, how you doing, mate?
Not the best after tonight, last night even, but we'll get into that, won't we?
We will indeed. We will indeed. Right. This podcast is brought to you in partnership with The Big Step. There is an excessive amount of gambling advertising within football, and The Big Step do great work highlighting the dangers and the damage that gambling does to people's lives. They are well worth a follow at @_Big Step on Twitter. Let's jump in. Let's talk National League. So the teams that have done particularly well this week, we're going to start with Chesterfield, who took 6 points. And if it wasn't for their goalkeeper, they probably would be on 9 points already this season. But we discussed their first game against Dorking last week, but they've taken 6 points, beating Aldershot 1-0 thanks to a Liam Mandeville goal on Saturday. Last night they took on Wrexham, and Jeff King and Ollie Banks were the goal scorers in a 2-0 victory in a game which was quite surprising, the way that they started that, coming out and being 2 up within 25 minutes, or 23 minutes as it was. And Nathan, this is a decent start for Paul Cook, because he got a little bit of flack last season, the way the team kind of tailed off. But it's encouraging signs, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like I said last season, obviously they were well up there for a good part of last season, and obviously tailed off or whatever. But I mean, as well, what you said, with obviously without the goalkeeper, they very well could have 9 points at this point. And obviously, no side has, even after the first 2 games, no side had a perfect record. So it shows what the league's like this season a little bit. Sort of everyone can kill everyone, everyone can beat everyone.
It's going to be like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
There will be. It's going to. People always talk like I saw quite a few people saying that, oh, this team will run away with it, that team will run away with it, and I just don't believe that's the case. I mean, I'm not sure in the way that the National League is structured and the quality that we have seen from even some of the quote-unquote weaker sides. I don't see it being such an easy ride for any side this season.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of teams who think they perhaps have the right to be up there, and some who are going to get quite a big shock that, it's a lot tougher than what it is. And, you've got to sort of have that. There's going to be those, these players who perhaps never played professionally, or at least in the league before, who are going to be hungry to even just get to mid-table will be a thing for them, just to push on hard and push on. And you need to be able to overcome that. And it looks as so far sort of that Chesterfield are one of those sides who have learnt from last season and have come over it. And something I wanted to mention as well is that, basically all the scorers are different. I mean, you've got 2 of their, main strikers who are, out injured, not playing at the moment. But the goals are still coming. I mean, all the goals will be scored by different people. I've got Ollie Banks, Jeff King, Liam Mandeville, Kwasi Sante, Emmanuel Dobber, all scoring different goals. And I think, there's something I like in a team is that when you have your one player who's your main outlet of goals, if they get injured or they get marked out the game, well, then you're screwed. But if you've got goals coming in from midfield, a few strikers, wingers or whatever, it's hard to mark out a whole team from a game. So I think that's definitely a good sign of Chesterfield, is that even without most of the main strikers, they're still scoring goals.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then who knows what will happen once those players come back, and over 8,000 there, albeit 2,000 from Wrexham, but, obviously having that big support behind you is always good as well, and definitely good results from them.
Absolutely, and I like the way the squad seems quite balanced. Ollie Banks is a great signing. I was very surprised that they got him, because he was Barrow's best player last season. Very consistent, very creative, and a guy that I think will probably find this division fairly straightforward because of his skill set. But yeah, you're right. I think they haven't got Shamanga back full time yet. I think he had a cameo against Aldershot at the weekend. But he's a player that we know will score 20 goals, no problem at this level when he's fully fit and firing. Obviously, Quigley's a tried and tested striker. But you're right, they're getting goals from other sources. They look a well-balanced team. Brandon Horton got his red card overturned for mistaken identity. We did discuss that in the Dorking game. That was just a ridiculous decision anyway. The ref, I don't know how he can mistake the identity of a man he was standing three feet from. Really,
Yeah.
I think he used that as a bit of an excuse. But yeah, great start for Chesterfield. We will talk about Wrexham in a minute, but it wasn't their best week. But certainly Chesterfield winners of these last two rounds for sure. Another winner was Woking, who took 6 points. Now they have 6 points from 3 games. Obviously outmuscled and outfought a little bit on the opening day of the season at York. Darren Sarll was not happy with that performance. So they outfought Dagenham on Saturday with a 2-0 win. Rhys Grego-Cox and Rowan Ince both on the score sheet in the first half, and then they managed the game really well to make sure they saw it out. Woking then beat Scunthorpe last night 2-0. Both goals by Kieran Lofthouse, one in the first half, one in the second, to end a pretty miserable week for Scunthorpe. But Woking are a side that we had in the playoffs, and after their performance on the opening day of the season, I never take too much from the first game. I think some teams start really badly and can have a sort of lay an egg and then suddenly be really good. So it's difficult to judge too soon. But what I do like about this team, Nathan, is the solidity that they've embedded in that team. Yesterday, on the weekend against Dagenham. And I do want to just add that we try and get the most accurate lineups and the most accurate sort of information, stats and stuff about the National League, but it's a bit of a challenge. Yeah. Anyone who looks at the BBC lineups will know that it's utterly ridiculous. The most inaccurate I've ever seen. Nathan was telling me they had a substitute goalkeeper up front for Oldham based on one that they put out recently. So it's not exactly accurate, but from my understanding of Woking, they're playing Casey as the fullback, along with Daniel Moss, who was on loan at Leyton Orient last season, came in from Millwall. They've got Luke Wilkinson and Scott Cuthbert as their sort of veteran centre-backs, their experienced centre-back pairing. They had Jim Kellerman and Rowan Ince as the sort of battling midfielders. And then they've got players all the way through the team in the likes of Greg Hotz, Lofthouse, Armand, Patrick Armand and James Daly, who, you look at those guys and you think, blimey, they're going to have some contributors this season. They've still got people like Ricky Corbeau who could come off the bench. And they've got Anderson as well who can come into that midfield. So they've got a decent squad. What good recruitment, I thought, generally over the board, Nathan. And they've picked up 6 points and 2 clean sheets since the weekend. And that's a nice step forward considering that disappointing opening day display.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they have brought in some good players to strengthen them, obviously, to try and push them up towards the right end of the table. But, something I saw, obviously, from like the Dagenham game as well. We haven't got the highlights from last night. We have to wait 2 years for them. But for the Dagenham game, it was like both their goals came from sort of basic, corners, balls going into the box and stuff like that and stuff. So I think that's going to be an area for them as well. And yeah, and obviously, like I said, Lofthouse got his brace to see off Scunthorpe. I think it's a little bit, obviously, while we think they will do well, it will be interesting to see how they do. And this is no, obviously, like disrespect to sort of the teams who've played so far, especially, but I'd be interested to see how they do, coming up in about just over 2 weeks or so, a week and a half so against a Wrexham, albeit one who we're still not a bit sure about, but against a top side like a Wrexham or, Notts County and so on, and see how they do against them. And obviously, the result against them would determine just how high they could finish if this obviously type of form does keep up. And obviously,
I think the teams that they will be very interested to beat are those that they expect to be where they want to be, i.e. those who are just sort of on the cusp of the playoffs. So you're right, it'll be interesting to see how they do against the very best sides in the division, those with lofty ambitions of finishing maybe as the champions or in the top two. But Woking probably we're realistically looking at, we need to beat teams like Dagenham and Scunthorpe if we want to make our goal of hitting the playoffs, because I'm sure realistically that's kind of where they're looking at, certainly to improve on last season. So they've done a good job in the week just gone to do that. Nice to see Grego-Cox score, because he, as I said, I saw him play at Crawley a lot. He was absolutely a fantastic player and then had this horrible series of knee injuries, or it might have just been the one injury that he really struggled to get back from. He scored the first goal on Saturday, and that's just great to see. I want him to enjoy his football again. I want them to get the best out of him. But they've got a nice feel to that front group with James Daly and Padraig Armand as the experienced guy with people like Grego-Cox behind him as well. So they've got a good team. Very good week for Darren Sarll's men. And Maidenhead, Nathan, took
Yeah.
6 points. This was the one that I think we definitely deserve to give a little bit of credit to, because no one thought after game week 1 that they were going to necessarily, they went to Notts County, they lost, fine. That's not where we said their bread would be buttered, but back-to-back wins, 6 points, really impressive. Beating Scunthorpe, they roared into a 3-0 lead on Saturday against Scunthorpe. They started again really well against Altrincham, scoring with Adrian Clifton scoring after just 12 minutes, and then they saw it out and scored a late goal right at the end as Altrincham pushed forward to seal it a 2-0 and 6-point week. And fair play to Maidenhead, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, what we said after that first podcast is, the Notts County game, they got beat 3-0, as we said, obviously while they'd be disappointed to win, and they'd hope obviously any team would hope to go away to Notts County, pick up a point or anything like that. This isn't going to be the determining factor of where they finish this season. It's going to be against some of the other games. And yeah, they went and completely shocked us by picking up 6 points on Saturday and Tuesday in 4 days. I mean, they went, obviously the 3-0, went 3-0 up against Scunthorpe and let Scunthorpe come back and score 2 goals. I mean, imagine doing that. It's absolutely, who would imagine doing that? Obviously Scunthorpe came back, but they held on. It'd be quite easy, obviously, especially a team who might be a little bit sort of low on confidence or whatever, based on sort of where they think they might finish, to bottle that basically and let it go to 3-3 or even 4-3. And then a win against Altrincham, albeit both at home, which obviously does make it always a bit easier.
Well, I was going to say, do you think the home form might be very, very important to them this season?
It's always going to be. I think for any team, your home form is important, and obviously their nice little stadium with a train line, I think, going by and stuff like that. A nice
York
little
Road. I think it's the oldest continually used football ground in the country.
Something like, I remember, I think when we did a podcast with Sean Donnellan, who was there last season, I think I mentioned something about that. It's like they got that record of the longest continued use by a single club, a same club, something like that, not counting any other clubs or anything like that. I think that's what it is anyway. But yeah, the home form obviously is going to be key to any team and stuff like that. You could, if you wanted to, I think they'll be happy with it and they'll take the positive from it into Dagenham next week and stuff. But I think if you wanted to be a little bit, you could be like Scunthorpe, they're a bit iffy, and Altrincham, obviously where would you expect them to be? But
you just got to beat what's in front of you, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. And if we're going to be saying that Maidenhead are going to be down there, getting results against Altrincham is obviously going to be a big thing. But it's 3 games in, so it's hard to say too much of what this could look like for the rest of the season.
All different scorers as well, which is one of your fanfares, isn't it? Emil Aqua scoring, Wilder Havland, Kane Ferdinand, Adrian Clifton and Sean McCloskey all on the score sheet in those 2 matches. Wilder Havland, is he the brother of Ryan, who's at Barnet? Because otherwise it's very uncanny that there's 2 de Havillands in the same league. And I
would imagine so, because I can't say I've come across de Havilland a lot.
No, it's
a
not,
surname.
It's not a name. It's not like your Radcliffe, which is 10 to a penny up the north. But yeah, no, that's a very good week for Maidenhead. Absolutely brilliant from them, and 6 points. So they've moved well on up out of where they were after game week 1. Top of the table are Barnet.
Yes.
They've got 7 points from 3 games. Obviously, joint top on points with like Chesterfield and that. But opening day win against Halifax. Went to Gateshead and took a 2-goal lead up there and kind of let it slip in the second half. Beat Yeovil last night. Nicky Kabamba getting goals number 2 and 3 for the season. He's looking like he could be a big pickup, a good signing. Obviously, was at Northampton last season. Didn't really sort of amount to too much there, though he had a fair bit of competition. But yeah, the Bees. Dean Glenn's doing an absolutely superb job. I mean, I can't remember the last time that they were top of the conference, but I can tell you this is equalled their best start for the last 3 years, where I think 3 years ago they went and beat Yeovil on the opening day, then they drew their next away game and won their next away game. So it's not like they've had awful starts for a long period of time, but this is a promising opening few games for the Bees, and considering their budget, considering kind of the challenges that they face, I mean, it's a great start, Nathan.
It is a very good start, and I think, like I said before, you've always, in terms of the points you pick up and the wins and draws you pick or whatever, it's always got to be contrasted against who you're playing, but you can only beat what's in front of you, and regardless of anything, if you win, you build up confidence. and they're building up confidence going into their next 2 games, home to Woking and away to Chesterfield. So if there's any 2 games you want to be going into with loads of confidence, I think it's those 2 realistically based on what we've seen so far this season. And, endless and strange things can happen, and hopefully this sort of nice little start can continue for them. And, maybe they'll sort of prove us wrong a little bit in terms of where we put them, and I know other people have put them and stuff like that. Obviously, like I said, the Gateshead game they were disappointed with that to be 2-0 up and to let that slip later on. And but in the other 2 games, you could say what you want about Halifax had a red card, Joe Wolf not, been a bit shaky, but you still got a bit with them. You can easily go into a game thinking, we'll beat these are easy, these are rubbish, or, we should smash these, and then end up losing or, drawing or whatever. So they started to do it. So I think, 7 points from the opening 3, they'll be very happy with that, more than happy even. And obviously that's why they're top now, by a goal, obviously, over Chesterfield.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they were, I think, one of only 2 other teams that managed to get 4 points from the last 2 matches over the weekend and obviously last night. And that's a really good start for them. Interesting to see how their sort of defence continues to hold up. They will be disappointed with the goals they conceded against Gateshead. Of course they will be, but Gateshead have started quite well. They've looked pretty solid so far, so I don't think they're going to be perhaps the walkovers. Oh, it wasn't walkovers, but I don't think they're going to struggle Gateshead as much as we perhaps expected due to obviously all the high-profile players leaving, especially in attacking positions. But they've done well so far. Yeovil, a bit worrying start for them. Not many happy Yeovil fans on social media last night, though social media is a really bad way of gauging what fans of a club really think, because it's either our manager's the best in the world or he needs to be sacked yesterday. So it can be difficult to tell. But Barnet, absolutely brilliant. Great start for them to the season. 7 points from their first 3 games and 4 points from the week just gone. So well done. Eastleigh, they got 4 points as well. Controversy around the way that they beat Wealdstone on Saturday. I've not really seen anything quite like this. So there was a foul in the corner. The linesman was about 2 inches from it and flagged vigorously to give a free kick I think it's to Wealdstone. He's flagging. Everybody stops. And then the referee says, actually, just play on. And Eastleigh quickly play the ball into the box and score, much to the consternation of the Wealdstone management and players. And it ends up being the winning goal. Very hot weather on Saturday. Eastleigh did well to hold out and get 3 points. They impressed us. I think we mentioned in their opening game at Wrexham where they played some nice stuff, took the lead, but ultimately lost that one. And then last night, they got a point with a late Charlie Carter equaliser against Dagenham. So better things from Eastleigh, Nathan, this week, and not a huge surprise actually, based on what we saw from Wrexham.
Yeah, I think we said after that opening game against Wrexham is that Eastleigh shocked us a little bit because we had them to not have the best of seasons down in the predictions pod, and this obviously while they did lose that game against Wrexham, we sort of went Wrexham, the firepower they've got, with Elliot Lee and his brace late on got beat them and stuff like that, so they've had a better start than we thought they would. And looking at the results and stuff, while the goal was controversial, they still had to score it and not concede any other ones against Wealdstone, who I think are another one who were perhaps a little bit, at least in my opinion, obviously better than we thought they would have been.
I thought they would be quite good. I think the football they're playing, Wealdstone, has been extremely impressive. They've got a really good. You're not going to get many goals against them when you've got Jack Cook as your centre back. He is big, and obviously Elowy, if that's how you pronounce it, on loan from Charlton, is a highly rated young player. So they're a good team. Nathan Ferguson's in that team, of course. He was at Crawley. They're one of their signings from Dulwich Hamlet. Scored that absolutely amazing goal at Forest Green for Crawley not that long ago. That's worth looking up. They had Alarakia who's obviously scored on Saturday. So they've got players at Wealdstone who at this level will be very, very, very good, and therefore Eastleigh getting that win and just sort of keeping that at bay is impressive. Charlie Carter, as I said, I keep waxing lyrical about him because I know what he's capable of if he can be fit. I think Corey Panther and Aaron Martin are really good pickups for the Spitfires. They've done a nice bit of recruitment. They've already got Jake Hesketh, who's a Southampton youngster who went out on loan to a few teams and looked good but got injured and never quite quite fulfilled the potential that you probably thought he was going to based on his opening few appearances. So Eastleigh have got a decent squad. Obviously, they've got Tristan Abrahams, who he needs a good season. He's had a few poor ones in a row, which have sort of sent him down the divisions. But I mean, Lee Bradbury will be chuffed. I think last night to score so late to make sure they rescued a point against Dagenham, who have not started the season well at all, and move them sort of up the table and just get them settled into a rhythm to start the season. The other team that got 4 points were Bromley. Nathan, Bromley are always going to be a team that are quite tricky to beat. They've got a nice balanced squad. They've got big guys at the back. They've got people who we know are going to probably score goals. It's quite a talented team, really. So not that surprising that there's 4 points from them this week, but they'll be pleased nonetheless. Yeah,
it's been a little bit. I'm struggling to find it a little bit hard to find out what's been going on with Bromley, because it's been a little bit here and there, obviously. But they've got the defeat on the opening day, which I was disappointed with. But defeat, draw, win, it's moving in the right direction. Albeit against a Torquay side with a red card, but you still got to do what you've got to do and stuff like that.
Was that the first goal Torquay conceded this season? It was, wasn't it?
Quite possibly.
I think it is. I think that's the first goal they conceded. Because after 2 games, Torquay are the only side in the National League, I believe, not to concede. So the goal that was scored by was it Dennis who scored it? The ex.
Lou Dennis. Yeah,
Lou Dennis. He's been around a few teams actually. But
yeah, just looking at it, they beat Halifax 1-0 and obviously drew with Oldham on the opening day, so that's Torquay's first goal, obviously conceded. But it seemed to be moving in the right direction there, obviously, if you want to view it like that. But I mean, it obviously was an interesting one, because obviously we looked at them on the opening day and sort of was like, obviously what they come off last season, FA Trophy, and obviously having a good season last season, so it was a little bit, for me, it's a little bit sort of. But personally, I don't know about you, but I think leave it a few more games before trying to gauge sort of properly what they're doing, because to me it's a little bit sort of up and down perhaps. But we'll see it. Give it a few games and against sort of Aldershot, Scunthorpe, Dagenham, and then see where they go from there. I think.
Absolutely, I do agree. They do have Byron Webster and Omar Sawamni as centre backs. Although according to the BBC, Sawamni is playing right wing, which is why I don't use the BBC website to tell me where players were playing. In any of these games, but yeah, good week for Bromley after a poor start. Last weekend they get 4 points. Nathan, let's talk a bit about the week that was, because we will come on to the losers of the last couple of games. But I think Oldham's first game at Boundary Park under the new era was definitely worth talking about. Massive crowd there, over 8,000. Your owner laughing on national TV at Manchester United's misfortune. Taking a 3-goal lead and then doing a very Oldham Athletic thing and having to cling on at the end. You don't do things the easy way. But it was, generally speaking, it was a great night, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, on a non-football note and personal note, I got sent up a bloody scissor lift cherry picker thing to take photos. That was fun. Being miles above the Oldham skyline, looking at people. But on a football note, yeah, I mean, the atmosphere was obviously quite amazing. It was like, 8,000, I think it was 8,500 there. Something like that. Absolutely bumper crowd, everybody was buzzing, wonderful weather or whatever, and like I said before, it would go 3-0 up at home and then concede 2 late on, but no, we went 3-0 up, and to be fair, it was absolutely rocking, especially after those 2 or 3, and being on TV, it's always gives, I think, the home crowd especially a big boost and stuff like that.
Biggest home crowd since that game against Bolton in 2017.
Yeah, it would be, and that was obviously season Shares of Action Part 2 and stuff like that, but I think it's the most who've had most Oldham fans in the ground, forgetting obviously away fans, I think since the Man City game, which was, I was alive, but very, very young, let's just say, I can't remember the exact year of that, I think 2005, I think that was, feel free to correct me on that, donkey's years ago for me, but yeah, with Oldham it was the one where we're 3-0 up, and we're, to be fair, perhaps the scoreline not as dominant as perhaps you might have based on the performance, but still took the chances, which was, if you looked at the Torquay game the week before, it was the complete opposite in terms of having dominance, but not really doing anything with it, missing chances and not putting it away properly. But that game was completely different. But to be fair to Dorking, they did well to have that fight in them to come back, just like they did with Chesterfield, have that fight and say, you know, we're losing, but, you know, let's come on and do something. And
bit of a bump down to earth last night, wasn't it, for you guys, with a 2-1 defeat at home to Wealdstone?
Yeah, as well. It was apart from an early Hallam Hope chance, it was all Wealdstone in the first half. It was an absolutely, I think if you ask anyone from Oldham, fans, players, management, whatever, it was just absolutely Wealdstone first half. Better second half, to be fair. You know, Tollett got his goal. You know, or some people say it was an own goal, but I think most of the move was Amy. He smashed the ball, it went off the crossbar and maybe went off the goalkeeper's back, maybe bounced in, who knows. But when you got 2-0 down early on, you give yourself a lot of work to do, especially against this Wealdstone side, who we know obviously what they could do, especially defensively. And they didn't even have, obviously, the Olamola, one of the strikers, obviously we, you know, scored from, you know, on the opening day and stuff. Yeah. So it still obviously weren't at full strength and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it'd be a wake up call to say, you know, we need to sort ourselves out a bit. I think for any club would be saying that, you know,
saw some Oldham fans tweeting after last night that, you know, how disgusted they were over the result and stuff. It's important to remember this National League, there's no easy teams, and you're coming from a position where you're historically, you're a great club, but Oxford were in the National League, or was it the Blue Square Premier it was called at the time, but we were in that division after being in the top flight, you know, not a million years before. So it's very, very easy to get despondent, and I think this National League is far better than the one that Oxford were playing in terms of just, you know, the quality of every team. There were really no. I look at these teams, even the ones that are sort of part time. I mean, they're still very, very good. They've still got excellent players. So it's going to be a tough season, I think, for Oldham. I think just an eye opener. You're going to have to be at your best to get points, and you'll see, like, the fact that Wrexham have been in this division for as long as they have is kind of a case in point, really. Dorking, quickly on them, they won last night at Maidstone 4-2. They're going to be fun to watch, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, you can see from these past, even all three games, the fightness to come back, obviously, with the Chesterfield game, but also obviously the old game fighting back, and Bobbage Taylor, I think, was absolutely amazing. Against us was fantastic, and to be fair, perhaps a player, I think, could look at perhaps maybe dip into that transfer budget, but no, fantastic, and obviously last night as well, emphatic 4-2 win and stuff like that, and 2 late goals on to secure the win. After I think being behind early on a little bit, or peg back even, I should say, equaliser. But yeah, I think they're going to be a team who are just going to, I think the mentality is let's just go at it, have fun, let's just try and score as many goals as possible, and just sort of shock the opposition with just how sort of brazen we are because of the amount of goals to just sort of
they'll outscore teams, and I think that defensively they'll be vulnerable, but they'll outscore teams, and I think that ultimately should be enough to keep them up. Is what we basically were saying in our sort of preview and predictions podcast. Let's get on to the teams that didn't have a great week. There were teams. There was only a team that got no points in the last 2 games, and we will cover them shortly. But you had Wrexham with 1 point. You had Altrincham, Borehamwood, Dagenham, Halifax, and Yeovil also only 1 point from the last 2 rounds of matches. Notts County got 2. I thought they were very unlucky. I think it was against Borehamwood, but the penalty in the second half was just. I don't really see why they gave that against them. So felt a bit sorry for Notts County, but we won't be talking them, I'm afraid, much on this podcast because we're going to focus on Wrexham for a minute. 1 point from this week, a draw at Yeovil and then a defeat last night, is raising the questions about Phil Parkinson again. Is he a good enough manager for this club to get them into the EFL? Loads of people pipping in saying, no, definitely not. Awful manager, archaic, out of touch, tactically out thought, tactically out manoeuvred by the managers. I mean, let's just be fair to him a second and say that, like I think we mentioned it, that in 3 of the last 4 National League seasons, the points total he got last year would have been enough to win the league. So, I don't know. That's me playing devil's advocate. I do have my reservations about Phil Parkinson. What are your thoughts on him, though, Nathan?
I think you was just about to touch on what you said there about obviously it was only a very, very good Stockport side that stopped Wrexham going up last season and the playoffs, which I think is really unfair to judge a team based on how they do in the playoffs. Obviously, absolutely. You know, it's a complete. okay, maybe these new playoffs are a little bit different and do favour your teams like your Wrexhams who come second and third and your Solihull's, but they're still complete madness and it's all based on one game, not even 2 legs. So it is 90 minutes or whatever. So if you were just basing it off these early few games, then yeah, you could definitely say that. But you've got to say it's mostly the same squad. There's still a lot, your key players who were there from last season. In last season, what was a good season based on the points they got? I think it was 86, I think it was, to come second or whatever. So if you base it off both of those seasons, you have to say, yeah, perhaps the results that not results that you would have wanted, but there were still games coming up for them to pick up points and to prove themselves against, like your Maystones and your Wokings. They're looking to obviously, try and slay that beast Woking, based on how they've done so far. Gateshead and Dorking and some. So yeah, they'll be disappointed, obviously.
They've only lost one game though.
Yeah.
Let's be fair to him. It's not like they've lost all 3 where you could argue. And I think Phil Parkinson has his detractors because people think it's almost fashionable to be a Phil Parkinson detractor. If he was an awful manager, yes, he has his detractors over it, like his tactics, maybe a bit too route one for some teams, but he wouldn't be in the game and have lasted as long as he has if he wasn't able to produce results. I mean, I remember him at Colchester. He played very good football as a manager at Colchester. He got his side really playing extremely well, and I think it was one of the reasons that they went up the leagues and eventually made it into the Championship, if I remember correctly. Bradford, he was fine, really solid. Bolton, I think, under difficult circumstances in the end, he left. Sunderland, how many managers we've seen recently struggle at Sunderland?
Yeah, loads.
3 or 4 of them have gone without lasting very long at all. I'm trying to think of all of them. The chap from Scotland, obviously, who I can't remember his name now off the top of my head, who came in on their first season in League One. Then they obviously had Lee Johnson, who didn't do much better. And it's only with then Phil Parkinson obviously was there, and then they've now got Neil Harris, who not Neil Harris, sorry. He's at Gillingham. Who's the manager? Alex Neil. Alex Neil. Yeah. Alex Neil, who's he is, to be fair, a Championship quality head coach. So difficult again for Phil Parkinson to be gauged too harshly in the time of Sunderland. And I think, wasn't he there during the pandemic, which ended their season when they were 3 points off top? There was some difficult circumstances. So my suggestion is, yes, it's easy to criticise him, but last season he got his team almost to win the league, but for a Stockport side that had huge firepower, huge resources behind them, and an excellent manager and squad. So difficult to be too critical of where they finished last year. One game they have lost this season. If we're going to be pernickety, Notts County haven't got any points, haven't won in the last couple of matches. It's very easy after 3 games to be ultra critical, and I think he's going to have to put up with this because Wrexham want to win the league, and they've got that pressure on them. But I would just say hold your horses a little bit, give him time, and we'll see what happens. I never like gauging teams before about the 10-game mark. I think we have this in the social media era for sure, this very reactive way of talking about football. So we'll see what happens with Phil Parkinson. But yeah, not a great week for Wrexham at all. But again, Chesterfield is going to be a difficult place to go. A point at Yeovil, on the face of things, is probably not good enough from where they want to be, but it's still a point away from home. So yeah. Right, so the other side's only got 1 point. Not hugely surprising. A bit disappointed with how Dagenham have started the season, I will say that. But there was only one team, Nathan, that got no points in the last 2 games, and that was Scunthorpe, who suddenly, after a really positive start, but probably against the Yeovil side that really were a bit sleepy and didn't get started until the last 25 minutes of their opening match of the season, they've had a wake-up call here because they were 3-0 down against Maidenhead. Did manage to push themselves back in it, but were essentially 2 goals behind right until the 88th minute, and lost last night as well. What are your thoughts on Scunthorpe? Because they were a side that we worried hugely about because they could just come and drop straight through the divisions. They were beaten rather comfortably, really, last night against Woking 2-0. And I think it's kind of for want of a better phrase, a kick in the nadgers.
I think if it's quite simple. The past two games not been good enough, and like you said about the Oval game is yes they won, but there's the asterisk next to that obviously of how the Oval played and how they're doing, and don't think it's been good enough, and we're worried about them obviously about how the fact is that if either team of the newly relegated ones were going to be sliding right down and going down to the National League North, if any of them were going to do that, it most likely would be Scunthorpe. And, we sort of saw them on the opening day and thought, oh, that's a bit different. And now perhaps sort of these past two games are pushing them a bit closer to where we think they could be. Like you were saying before, obviously you don't like to judge teams up until about 10th game, and I think we should, not try and put too much on it. But the past two games haven't been good enough, and there are doubts over Phil and obviously his management style.
I think it's also more as well of the way the club, in terms of they're trying to be sustainable. They don't have a lot of money. They've been very much on a downward spiral for the last 2-3 seasons. It is quite worrying. They don't want to get into the losing habit in this division because that will really be difficult to get out of.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to get into a losing habit whatsoever. And like you said about the overall theme of the club as well is one which was competing to be in the Championship just a few years ago. I remember my early moments as season ticket holder in League One was Scunthorpe being up there just like with Bradford. They were up there pushing for the Championship. Things with the amount of money being put in changed, and ever since then, I think after that playoff season, I think it was something like, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's basically the case of they've finished in the bottom four every single season, survived sometimes, but finished in the bottom four every single season for the past 4 or 5 years. So it's been a complete downward spiral, and other clubs have done it. Chesterfield were another one who I think did back-to-back relegations, League One to League Two. So a very somewhat similar story, and very nearly made it 3 out of 3 if it weren't for them being saved by I think John Sheridan went back there and then saved them that season before leaving the following season. And it very well could be a similar story perhaps with Scunthorpe, is that they could be struggling at that other end of the table, especially if some of these sides, like with the Maidenhead, who we thought could be down there, actually do a bit better than we thought and actually do push on and start building results. So it could be worrying for them. And in terms of coming up games next, they've got Bromley, Halifax, Bournemouth, Eastleigh, so some games where
they'll want to get minimum 6 points from those, surely.
They'll be looking to that Halifax game at home thinking, we've got to get something from that game, got to, absolutely. So
not bad squad when you look at it, like people like George Taft, who've had experience in the league, Whitehouse, Butterfield, Feeney, and Colin Daniel, all played in the EFL to a fairly decent standard quite recently, but a lot of people talking about their recruitment being slightly too old, slightly lacking energy. They do have good youngsters at the club with people like Mason O'Malley and Alfie Beeston, people that they've had and brought through. And obviously Gallimore is another youngster who sort of broke on the scene last season. So they've got that. But very disappointing week for them, finishing with no points from the 2 games. And obviously early days, let's keep calm, no panics, no worries. But that really is the sort of the winners and losers. Southend got 2 points. For our Southend listeners, we'll talk about you a lot more, but actually 2 points from fairly difficult away games. I certainly think Solihull's going to be a tough place to go. Solihull, of course, playing tonight against York on telly, so if anyone wants to catch that game, it sounds like it should be a really good one. Gateshead, I think, have 2 good draws, especially considering against Barnet that they were 2-0 down. And obviously last night they conceded late, so they sort of the good and the bad from their perspective. Only 1 point for Oldham, as we mentioned, so not great for them. Notts County 2 points, but again a caveat over how they got the draw against Bournemouth, I think, on the weekend. I think they're a bit unlucky with that one as well. But it's been an interesting couple of game weeks. Too early to make too many judgment calls. Let's have a look at the top scorers at this very early stage of the season, because no surprises that there's some Dorking players in there. You've got James McShane, 3 goals for him this season. Nicky Kabamba for Barnet as well, also 3. So those 2 joint top scorers. Ryan Seeger's got 2. Again, a player for Dorking, Elliot Lee 2, Kieran Lofthouse 2, Rhys Brown for Wealdstone's got 2, Andy Dallas for Solihull 2, and I know that, of course, Langstaff's on 2, Blackett Gateshead's on 2, and so should Adam Campbell be actually in this list. Jamie Record 2 for Yeovil. Joe Nuttall, his brace for Scunthorpe puts him up there in the early stages. Sam Corn for Maidstone United. Ben Tollett, if it was indeed his goal, he's got 2 now for the season as well. So, but yeah, that is enough from us today. Nathan, thank you for joining us.
No problem.
Good to have you on, and we will get some guests on this podcast. We sort of working on it, but it's early days in the season. It's all a bit up in the air at the moment, so we'll let things settle down before sort of bringing others into this. Probably. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions or feedback about the podcast, honestly, just get in touch with us. It's at D5 Football on Twitter. You can find our personal handles as well on there. Fairly straightforward, as I'm sure. But until next week, please take care and have a good week ahead. Goodbye.